Hello everyone. Good to see you on a Friday night. Who have we got in the chat? We've got Kim, who is the first to answer my pinned question correctly, that it was Brad Mill. That's the thumbnail. And Kim says that she hasn't been up that high. Fair enough. Joel Packett is also in the chat, who says abandoned buildings, yay! That's right. And we've got moderator Stephen here, who says, who also answers the question and says Brad Mill, and I haven't been, sorry, he has been up there. He has been up that high before. So, yeah. How about this? Can anyone be more specific? Where exactly in Brad Mill did I take that photo from? Or did I use a drone? You tell me. Joel also says, I've been wanting to have a look around the abandoned buildings around the old Lilydale limestone quarry, but there's so many people working around there to fill the quarry back in, I would defs get caught. Yes, you would. I wouldn't attempt that place. I know people who have, and they've been chased out by dogs. Good evening, Matt, K183. You liked my North Melbourne video. Thank you. Yeah, that was just something very quick that I did no editing for that whatsoever. It was literally just a clip which I had filmed back in, what was it, 2017? So 5 years ago now. Yeah. And yeah, that was a good trip. We went to a few places around Melbourne, and the North Melbourne Balloon Loop was somewhere which I had really wanted to get to, and I did on that trip, and now you can't do it anymore. So lesson is, if you're a rower enthusiast, do what you can when you can, because you never know how long it's going to last. Tony, good evening. Yeah, Matt says the best of British tour. Yeah, that was a good tour. That was a good tour. And Patrick says, I believe it was taken at the top of the conveyor belt at Brad Mill, and yes, I've seen that exact view. Yep, that's right. Top of the conveyor belt. Yeah, I'm trying to think whether I actually was still on the conveyor belt or not. I have a feeling I was just, yeah, at the very top of the conveyor belt, so I think you're pretty much spot on there. Because, yeah, I was initially thinking, I mean, that photo was taken like 5 years ago in itself, but actually it was 2016 I took that, so yeah. What date? February in 2016, was it? Or was this a different date? Let me just... It was in April 2016, still. That makes it 6 years old now, so 6 and a bit. Anyway, yeah, I thought I might have been like actually in the boiler house, but looking at my shots, no, I think I was at the top of the conveyor. Yeah, the building with the chimney and the conveyor belt leads to, that was the boiler house. If you don't know your industrial architecture, you can tell because it's got the big chimney and the boilers inside, if you don't know that sort of thing. So they would have boiled water to create steam that ultimately, originally it would have run the entire factory on steam, but in later years they probably would have just converted it, used the steam to drive some turbines and then generate power from those turbines and use the electrical energy to power the rest of the site. Anyway, I'm blubbering on for something which I said is going to be short. So due to high uni commitments at the moment, I'm going to try and limit this to just half an hour of discussion. Now, I'm aware that that is perhaps a little ambitious considering my track record of sticking to 1 hour, but we'll see. But yeah, we've been going on for 5 minutes already, so let's get into it. So I'm going to assume that you perhaps have seen a few abandoned buildings online, or maybe you've passed a couple in the street, but I'll assume that you've just seen some online and you've got no idea where they are, but you want to find them. And maybe you think, I live in a small town or whatever and there's no abandoned buildings near me. And there might not be a huge abandoned factory near you, but guaranteed there's an abandoned house around the corner. In fact, small towns, I would say, are more likely to have an abandoned house than larger cities. Almost. Depends on the town. But so the first thing that you want, actually before I get into it, I'm just going to preface this information a little bit but by saying that I'm not going to tell you the addresses to any abandoned buildings in this video. I will give you some pretty serious hints at some places, enough so that you will be able to find them on your own, but I think that's ultimately better. And I get asked every so often, can you share abandoned places with me? And the answer is, well, I could, but I don't want the building to get trashed, first of all. That's my biggest concern in sharing a location. And secondly, it's actually going to be better for you if you find it yourself. I'll give you some hints, but if you ultimately find it yourself, then it'll be better for you. So, in terms of there's the information that I'm going to divulge in this live stream could very easily be used for the wrong purposes, and by the wrong purposes I mean people who want to trash buildings. It's certainly not my intention, and I feel that it'll be long enough so that I can scare them off a little bit with the length of the video. But ultimately, there could be people who trash places because of this video, because they've found it, but, they were probably going to find the place one way or another. And, I just feel like the information will do more good than harm. So, it's always a decision that I have to make when revealing information about abandoned buildings. As someone who obviously takes photos and videos of abandoned places, the simple act of posting those shots will draw attention to the building. So, ultimately, if I was taking an extremely cautious approach I would never post any photos or videos, and I'd just go there myself and just take the photos for my own keeping and whatnot. But, you know, where's the fun in that? And I feel like, yeah, people can get enjoyment, and sure, there's going to be a bit of harm, but I just try to make it so that there's more good than harm. And, you know, when faced with the possibility of blurring stuff out, I sort of weigh up the idea of how trashed is it, how likely is it to become further trashed as a result of if I didn't blur that. You know, all sorts of things like that. Because blurring, especially blurring in photos, isn't too hard. Blurring in video gets more difficult, and you only know if you've tried to do it yourself how much of a pain in the arse it is. Because, yeah, even if you've got software that has like auto tracking tools and whatnot, they're never perfect. You've always got to spend time doing manual corrections, and yeah, it can just be a bit nasty. Anyway, just checking a few messages. Oh, I got a tip for driving Uber Eats. That's cool. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that there was no one messaging me saying something's wrong with the stream. I'm like, no. So, yes, we're 15 minutes in, and Patrick says, haha, let's see how the half-hour target plays out. If it ends up being an hour, well, hey, that's so be it, and at least it's not 2 hours. That's my thought. And Joel Peckett says, used to go past old abandoned LTCs near me, now gone, sad I missed out on picturing them. And Lil J also says hello. Yeah, I've certainly been to a few places, either just driven past and thought, oh yeah, I'll get in there one day, or actually been somewhere and thought, oh, I won't take too many photos now because I'll come back later and take some more photos, and then didn't end up getting back before it was demolished. The Newport Flour Mills was a great example of that. I took just a couple of photos. Oh geez, I've only got one photo apparently from the Newport Flour Mill. Damn. Kind of sucks because that was a good place. There was so much cool stuff there that I just didn't photograph. Anyway, let's not get too nostalgic in this stream. Yeah, definitely. Even if you can only go in for 5 minutes, just get in, photograph it, get out. You know, if you can, do it, because one day it'll be demolished and you'll go, oh shit, I meant to go there and you didn't. Anyway, the first thing in finding your first abandoned location is go to an obvious place. And by that I mean find somewhere that's very trashed, such as and that's, you know, relatively well known. And if you follow enough local urbexes, you'll know the places that you know, are the most well known, such as Bradmill. I'm not going to tell you exactly where Bradmill is, but with a little bit of Googling, I'm sure you can find it. And the name of my old channel may give you a slight hint But we've touched on that before, haven't we? So yeah, the reason why I say that is go to the obvious places because A, it's almost a rite of passage. Obviously it's not, nobody's going to murder you if you haven't been there, but it's like, oh, well, why not? Everyone else has been there, so why not go there? See what all the hype's about. Or go there and think, oh, this isn't nearly as good as everyone makes out it is. So, yeah. But just go to the classic spots that are around at the time. Find, any local houses or whatever. Just the first thing to look for when you're trying to find abandoned buildings is just signs of it being trashed, because those are the most obvious ones. Trashed buildings, you work your way up to the not trashed buildings, but I almost feel like you'll have a very hard time trying to find the not trashed buildings if you can't find the trashed ones. Because whenever you're looking for abandoned places, that's what you're looking for, is signs of decay. So just by going to these places and looking at photos and whatever, you'll start to develop an eye for what makes an abandoned building stand out to you. Graffiti, smashed windows, that's pretty obvious. But the more of these you'll go to, the more you'll develop an eye, and you'll start to find places that perhaps just a little bit trash. One piece of graffiti caught your eye, but the place isn't covered in graffiti. But, that place might have other signs of decay, like lots of dirt around, overgrown grass, overflowing mailbox, little signs like that are not as obvious as a glaring piece of graffiti or a smashed window. That's the basic process, is you're just working your way up. You're slowly going to be seeing more, and the more you look, the more you'll find. And just look whenever you're going out anywhere. You, by all means, once you're more familiar with how to find abandoned places, go for a hunting session and go drive around the streets or whatever and go find stuff. But you'll find a lot by just driving around normally, or on the train or whatever. You know that you're just going to be out doing other stuff, and you'll just see an abandoned building, and okay, you might not have time to explore it then and there, but make a note of it. I recommend Google My Maps. That's what I use. If you go to Google Drive, or just Google My Maps, and it's just a way of creating a custom Google Maps overlay. Take a shot every time I say Google Maps. You'll be able to drop a pin whenever you find a place. Or you can just use the normal Google Maps app and flag a spot. I know a few people do that. Or you could just write down addresses. I know people who do all of those things. I find that My Maps is better because I can then colour code the markers, so that for me it's like, okay, I've got, and I'm not going to show you my map because it's got too much sensitive information on it, and plus it's a bit outdated, I haven't touched it in a while, but it's got different colour codes for like a place that I know of but I haven't explored yet, versus a place that I know of and I've been to and I've photographed and everything, versus a place that is demolished and I never got to, a place that's demolished and I documented well. That's me. You don't have to go as in depth as I do, but I just find that that's cool to keep track of. Anyway, let's look at some comments. Brian says, stopping in for a few minutes, but I'll come back to watch the whole thing later. Okay, no worries. Hello, Albert. And Little J said, you said you were busy studying. What are you studying at uni? Automotive engineering. Roderick Smith says, LTC, long, thin corridor. That is not what they are called. I know that's what they may have gotten a reputation for, because that is true, they did have a long, thin corridor, but LTC actually stands for light timber construction. They were designed to not last very long and have ended up lasting long past their due date, but that's why we love them. Best abandoned place I've been to would be the Morwell briquettes factory. Don't try to get in there. You will get prosecuted. You will. You see those signs saying trespassers will be prosecuted? 99.9% of the time, those signs are complete BS. It's true with Morwell briquettes factory and power station. You will get prosecuted. I know of people personally who have been in and got prosecuted. So there's your warning. Australian natives. I'm not being rude, but why are you doing how to find bandos when you only do trains? Well, that's because I don't always do trains. I know that's what I've been doing a lot of recently, but my origins are very much in urbex, and so abandoned buildings. Roderick Smith says, if I recall correctly, it's that LMAPs or IMAPs are always better quality, but went to subscription only. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. Look, Google Maps is fine for my purposes. Australian Natives says, yeah, my mate got caught in there. How'd they catch you at Morwell? They didn't catch me at Morwell. I got in just before they put security in. I had gotten word that they were about to put security in, serious security, not just pissweak, rattled doors every couple of hours security, but yeah, so I got in before, but my mate got caught, and I think they caught him coming out of there, and then he refused to give them information, and then eventually they saw him on the cameras. They got photos of him on the cameras, so that's how they prosecuted him. Why did it go abandoned? The Morwell power station, because brown coal in the area was drying up, and the interconnecting railway from the mine that's across the other side of the railway line was long abandoned. So briquettes, I mean, the fact that they just didn't need to produce briquettes anymore. Industry in the timeline of the 20th century, early 20th century, industry ran on steam power. Mid 20th century, industry converted to briquettes. Briquettes, or I'll say early to sort of mid. The industry was still powered on steam mostly, but was fueled by briquettes. And then medium industry transitioned to electricity. Large industry still generated their own power, but were fired on oil, mainly, fuel oil. And then towards the end of the 20th century, even large industry switched over to being fully electric from the grid. So, yeah, and with more and more renewable energy coming online, there just wasn't a need for a 1940s brown coal power station anymore. That was comparatively quite small. You know, we've still obviously got Yallourn W and Loy Yang A and B still operating. In fact, those are the only coal-fired power stations we've still got operating. But yeah, they generate a lot more power compared to what Morwell did. So that's why they're still around and Morwell isn't. What security does it have now? Cameras 24/7 SECI? Yep, indeed. All that, and motion sensors, lights, the lot. Just about the most comprehensive security package you could ask for. Stephen says RIP Hazelwood, and Roderick says natural gas also replaced briquettes for steam generation. Lots of processes need steam as steam, not just to drive machinery. Yes, you're right. For large industry that still needs steam as steam, or still needs heating in some capacity, there's plenty of industrial processes that require a great deal of heating that isn't necessarily steam. They've been transitioned into natural gas. Good luck, Australian natives. I certainly would not recommend it. Anyway, we're getting well off topic here. And we're already 30 minutes in, so there goes our 30-minute mark. Anyway, that's what you get when you come to my streams. You as I was saying before, you'll slowly build up to finding from the more trashed to the more not trashed. Eventually you can do some research online and look up places such as the Victorian Heritage Database, news articles, that sort of thing. You can often Google such and such a place closed or something like that, and that will sometimes yield places, sometimes not, but you know, that all takes time, and you've then got to do a bit of a scoping. Maybe you can use Google Street View sometimes, although especially in the country it can be 10 years out of date and that, or more, you know. Don't we all love 2008 Street View? Tell me if you know the joys of that. So you'll find places, and I couldn't tell you how many places I've been to in my time of urbexing. Hundreds, if not over 1,000. Wouldn't be surprised if it was over 1,000, put it that way. And so, yeah. What else? I guess I can talk about how a lot of people find locations, and that's by not looking for them themselves. And by that I mean other people have found them already and they're just getting the information off that person. Or, you know, it's no secret that abandoned locations get addresses to locations gets shared around quite a bit. I've been the recipient of plenty. I've shared addresses with trusted people. No, dogs, go away. I don't like... The thing is with if you're going to ask someone for locations, almost always they're going to expect a location in return, either before, so it's a direct trade, you know, you might say, oh, you know, this trade would never actually happen, but let's just say, for the sake of arguments, I'll tell you the location. You might approach me and say, oh, do you know where Bradmill is? And I'll say, yeah, have you got anything to trade? And you might say, I've got Nilex, do you know where Nilex is? And I might say, no, I'm willing to trade. So you tell me, okay, well, Nilex is where it is. And I'll say, cool, here's Bradmill. Thanks for the trade. That's one way. Or it could be a sort of owing. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'll tell you where Bradmill is. And you might not have anything right now that I want to know, but perhaps next time I might want to come to you if I see that you've posted photos of the play centre. Then I might go, hey, where's that play centre? I gave you the location of Bradmill, so do you want to give me the location of the play centre? And you might go, yeah, sure enough, sure thing. I told you, you told me where Bradmill is, or whatever. You get the idea. It's a trade, but at a later date, and eventually, with a lot of people, they can come to a mutual agreement of you ask me for anything, I ask you for anything, and nobody's counting, but at any time that I ask for one, I expect you to give it, and at any time you ask me for something, you expect me to give it. I don't like going down that route. I don't like asking people because I don't like the expectation of having to give something in return every time. Very rarely I'll do a one-off trade, but that's rare. I've got to be desperate. I've got enough locations up my sleeve so that I could trade with anyone at any time, but I also don't need to trade with anyone at any time. Yeah. And the reason why I do that is not because I like to keep locations to myself, it's because I don't want the location falling into the wrong hands. And unless you're a trusted friend, I don't know you. It could be that you are very trustworthy, but I've got no way of knowing that until I get to know you more. So, yeah. And even then, you know, as a trusted friend, I'm going to test you out and see if you really can be trusted. And I might tell you the location of, say the slaughterhouse in the country, and I know that it's already a bit trashed, but it could get worse. So I'll tell you the one time and I'll go, yeah, sort of house, it's in this town or just outside of it. And you'll go, thanks. And then if I see that 2 weeks later, suddenly everybody knows about it, and, you know, it was pretty low key up until that point, then I'm going to have a strong suspicion that it was you who told everyone, or at least told one person who told another person who told another person who, you get the idea. So, yeah, I'll work my way up before giving you the really trusted locations. And not to brag, I guess it's a humble brag if you like, but there are plenty of really like untouched for decades abandoned locations that I know about, and that I know that a couple of them have been found by other urbexers by similar methods to how I found it in the first place, which was driving around and doing my research beforehand. But, you know, a lot of them are still unknown. I have not seen anybody else post a photo of a lot of my locations, so that's cool. You know, not unless I've brought them there. And yeah, it's like, I actually wish that I didn't have to be so secretive with locations. I actually do wish that. But that's the nature of the hobby, is that some people like to trash it. And, you know, I used to go so far as calling those people fagbexers. You know, they're not urbexers, they're fagbexers. And then I decided that calling them fagbexers was probably not the best idea, even if there was no offence in using fag word. Like, yeah, even though there was no offence intended, and we had cleared it with a couple of gay friends, but we still just made the decision, and by we I mean Les and I, who I used to run Fogarty Avenue with. Yeah, we just made this decision together that it was probably the best idea to just turn it into a beat bexer. Anyway, but Les still sort of maintains the idea that they're not urbexers, they're beat bexers. Personally, I'm like, well, you can call yourself what you want. If you want to call yourself an urbexer, then fine, you're an urbexer. You're just not my kind of urbexer. And I think the majority of urbexers are respectful, but I'd say my estimate is 50% are very respectful and very aware of how to be respectful. About 25% are reasonably respectful themselves, but can be a bit sloppy in how they hide locations or not hide locations, or just a bit of a blabbermouth. And 25% are actually the troublemakers who trash stuff, and, you know, we like to avoid them. Anyway, Roderick says, I'm not an urbexer, but have had occasional site visits when I happen to be at a location for other reasons. A fruit cannery, an abattoir, a few petrol stations, coal mines in China and Bosnia. I've also had unauthorised group visits to disused locations, Maribyrnong munitions, cinemas, railway workshops in Java. Yeah, so that's cool. And we're at the 43-minute mark. So, thinking about what I've covered and if there's anything more I want to cover. Talked about how to find places on your own. I guess I'll say that you're far more likely to find an untouched place in the country than you are in the city, and the further out in the country you go, the better. You know, I found a place and I've taken Rod to that place that has since collapsed, I found out it collapsed because I went back to visit it with Rod to find out if it had collapsed, because back in 2018 was my first visit to this abandoned school out in the country, and it looked like it had blown over. It looked like it was about to be blown over, but then I later found a photo online from, I think, 2006 or something like that, and it looked in identical shape. So I was like, well, okay, if it's survived that long, how much longer can it survive for? That school had been abandoned since 1942. And yeah, so if you can still call it an abandoned building and not an abandoned collapsed building, but definitely, like, 1942 versus 2018, 76 years of abandonment. It was literally abandoned for longer than it was open for, by a few decades. So yeah, that's just a hint, a taster, if you like, of the sort of places that you can find with a bit of research and a bit of scouting. I don't think that's the sort of place where you would ever stumble across it. You'd have to research the area and then find it that way. But yeah, you can get some pretty prized locations. And that's the sort of place which I will keep zipped unless it's, you know, close friends who I know I can trust. Yeah, well, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to. Yeah, considering that we had 5 minutes of pre-stream, or whatever you want to call it, I don't think we've done too bad for running over time. Maybe it was 3 minutes, but anyway. Yeah, so unless anyone else can think of something to add to the discussion, I'm going to call it here. Next stream, 2 weeks' time, should be no issues with that. Let me just check my calendar while I'm here. Yes, shouldn't be an issue. Okay then. No extra comments, so thanks for watching. See you in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.